So we want to kick things off. We want to let each of our panelists here give a little bit of an intro about who they are, what they do and represent, and then actually start with answering the question I just posed, which is, if we're saying that banking's happening everywhere but at a bank, then where is banking happening? What does it look like today? And what's sort of the prospects there for the future? So Szymon, I'd love to start with you, if you can.
All right. Morning, everyone. My name is Szymon Wałach. I'm Chief Digital Officer for PKO Bank Polski, and I run the digital transformation. Well, answering your question, maybe we should start with asking why we so often, especially as bankers, think about banking as a product industry. We are in a service industry, so as a service, we try to be with our customers wherever they are, wherever they need us. That's why we start banking, like me today, and checking my balance on my account, and if some of the money transfers came in. And that's banking as we experience now every day. So from bank's perspective, we need to be everywhere where clients need us. What it means, I mean, we need to be real time, we need to be frictionless, and we need to also think about future needs, especially given the context of disruption happening around typical banking services like payments. They often embedded into marketplaces like Uber, like Amazon. So banks need to go really fast forward and envision the future and try to be a service for customers also in those future marketplaces. That's a big challenge because we will see branding of banks sometimes disappearing, and this is something where we need to be super cautious to stay on top of the minds of our customers and try to position ourselves as trusted service provider rather than a bank selling and pushing products. So that's probably the big challenge for the future question you just raised.
Great. Paul.
Yeah, morning, everybody. My name is Paul Clark. I'm the CTO at Tandem Bank. Tandem's a digital-only bank in the UK, one of the new banks. So we've only been in market since the beginning of the year. So, like, question of how do people want to bank? Where do they want to bank? The answer is people don't want to, really. People don't. We have a little saying: people like to spend money, they don't like to spend time with money. And really, success for us is people not doing banking. Banks traditionally have been set up. If you talk to people who've been in banking for a long time, they talk about manufacturing and distribution. They use these kinds of phrases like they're creating products. Banks, we're trying to create a bank which is about solving problems. The focus is wrong at the moment in the way that banks work. People are expected to be experts at banking. They're expected to know if they need a credit card or a loan, what's the best credit product for them. They're meant to stay on top of their accounts and pick products. Really, in today's age where we have a mass of data and financial transaction data, and we have things like machine learning, we should be able to analyze people's interactions with their money and actually take banking to them. So for us, banking works when people don't have to log into their banking app, when their banking app is just there, is ticking away in the background, is helping them optimize their finances. Banking shouldn't be about selling products. It should be about manufacturing and distribution. It should be about solving problems. People don't wake up in the morning and think, hey, I want a loan. People wake up in the morning and think, I need a new car. How do you help them solve that problem without pushing products down their throat? And how do you help them solve that problem in an optimized way where they're going to have the least amount of fees and the least amount of interest payments? Because banking can be very profitable without taking advantage of the customer. You can work with the customer. So yeah, banking to us, it should happen everywhere, but it really should happen nowhere. Banking should be something that comes to you rather than something you have to log in and check every day.
Yeah, hi there. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Ross Darcy. I'm sales director at Ripple. Ripple is a software company, so we're not a bank. We are a San Francisco software company, and we're focusing on one pain point and one friction point in the market, and that's cross-border payments. So our mission is very simple. We want to reduce the friction from cross-border payments, and our end vision is to enable what we call the Internet of Value. And the Internet of Value, to put simply, is to allow our customers, which are banks, to send value as easily as we send information today. So with that in mind, if you think about a bank, if you kind of simplify a bank to its core, when I think about retail banking, I think about three things. A value store, access to credit, and giving customers the ability to actually move money. So that third piece is where Ripple come in, and that's where we see the most friction. So I think it's kind of slightly absurd that we can send, Tesla can put a car in space and we can stream video from International Space Station, but it still takes 3 or 4 days to send money to friends and family abroad, which is just absurd. And the other thing I would say as well is that, we kind of accept these paradigms. We accept these as just a given thing. So we've all sent payments, and when you do, and if you work with any bank, and I bank with a typical bank in the UK, one of the things that we realize is that you don't receive a confirmation when you send a payment. So something as simple as receiving a confirmation when you've essentially purchased a service doesn't exist today. So I think payments is where we're seeing a lot of disruption. It's already happening. If you look eastwards, if you look at Alipay, the largest payment company in the world, 700 million customers, trillions of dollars, and it's already happening, the change taking place. But we still see a lot of friction, and I think the way I'd end is, hey, we like banks, and I think banks are going to be around for a long time. They are going to change, but I don't think they're going anywhere. And companies like us, we're empowering banks. They can provide, new services to customers, basically.
So recently, Christine Lagarde came out. She was at I think giving a talk in Singapore, and she sort of had said, put forward this idea that there's a possibility for private-public partnerships in the future that change banking more towards central banks being able to do the sort of actual transaction part, and banks themselves being able to, or startups, being able to sort of manage the customer relationship and new products and any sort of innovation that goes on there. How do you see kind of regulation changing or affecting what you think the future of your work is? I'll start with you, Ross.
Yeah, so I think regulation is part and parcel of what banks do. Financial services is the most regulated industry in the world, and if you think about the context of change and the context of companies, fintechs, software companies that are disrupting the market and changing, challenging the incumbents, data is a big issue, I think, and data is massive, and you've seen companies like Facebook and concerns around people like Alipay when it comes to data. And I think banks have always been very open to working with regulators, and I think fintechs have to adopt that same approach as well. Christine Lagarde, by the way, we should have more people like her in the world because she says some great stuff, very forward-thinking, and I think we should all look to her as inspiration, I think.
Paul?
I think one of the big fundamental changes that's coming down the track, I'd love to say exactly when, but I'm not sure, is the whole idea of open banking, data portability, giving customers ownership of their data and being able to then take that data to third-party providers. I think over the coming years, as we see that mature, and at the moment, it's not good enough at the moment. It's V1, but it will get better. What you'll see is a whole ecosystem of fintechs come through that are doing really innovative things with your money, things that we possibly can't even imagine today. But that whole open banking idea is really letting the genie out of the bottle. And what's going to happen, and the reasons for it are brilliant. We're going to see much more innovation in money. We're going to see much more innovation in price. And it's all going to be for the benefit of the customer. And so really, when you look at open banking and you look at machine learning and those two things coming together, there is a whole world of businesses out there. And the people who are going to do worst out of it are the incumbent banks, I believe, who will become these stores of value. And you'll forget that you bank with whoever, HSBC, and you'll instead use this app over here every day to kind of find out information about how your finances are and recommend you new products and move money and do payments. And the bank will just be the store of value. So I think it's going to be, that for me is the biggest regulation that's going to shake things up.
All right. Well, I agree with the statement that the international payment system is broken. So that's something to be fixed by regulators, and global players like Mastercard, I think represented here on the mBank. But from a retail bank perspective, like PKO Bank Polski, what we try to do is to make sure that for our customers we can secure real-time, fast and frictionless payments. I mean, I think one of the largest innovations in that space, and an example of digital competition, was a Polish payment standard called BLIK. And if you think about it, I mean, that's the future way to go for banks. I mean, we, as local players, we will be too small to face the large challengers like GAFAs. And by teaming up and creating new standards, that's the only chance to have a competing value proposition. These days, I mean, BLIK is the fastest growing method of payments for e-commerce. It's easy, frictionless. I believe there's a big future in front of BLIK for P2P payments, where people will send money just for using phone numbers. And I think that's something that banks, retail banks should focus on. I mean, how we can make sure that our customers have the best method of payments, and how we can compete with the large digital platforms. BLIK is one of those chances that we have in front of ourselves, and that's why we invest so much in scaling up. PKO BP just recently announced that we have over 3 million mobile app users, and BLIK is the fastest growing method of payments among our customers.
So how do you guys think identity sort of plays a role in this future? Because to some degree, when we were talking about peer-to-peer transfers or just being able to do more frictionless banking, whether it's through banking apps or through other marketplaces, a lot of that is really hinging on your identity, right? And being able to identify people uniquely in a digital world. So what do you think about sort of new approaches to identity, or where are we going to see innovation on identity happening?
So I think identity is a bigger problem than just for banking. I think that is like the big problem to solve. If you look at fraud, for instance, in our organisation, a lot of fraud is done because we can't say for certain who the person is who is taking out a credit product or who money is being moved to. And there are moves afoot in the UK to improve the payment mechanism, so when you pay somebody, you're paying that person. But the idea of a sovereign identity, where you own your identity isn't via Google or Facebook or one of these, it's your identity. And once your identity has been validated, you can then take your identity and present it. I think not just for banks, but for all digital, that is something that needs to be solved. Because once you get to that point, all the things you're talking about instant payments or worldwide payments or fraud, all that, suddenly that just becomes solved. But right now, where everybody has to re-identify themselves with every service every time, there's too many opportunities to get that wrong and too many opportunities for fraud. So we'd love to see a sovereign identity system, if anybody would like to invent one.
Yeah, one of the points I was making, I think that it certainly is a challenge. And I think what I would say to change in banks is difficult, right? So when we deal with this every day, when we speak to banks all over the world, and the analogy that we use, which I think all of you guys will relate to, is, changing systems, dealing with new kind of ways to process identity and so on. It's almost like changing the jet of an airplane when the airplane isn't in flight, right? It's difficult. And I think the advice I would give to banks, or the suggestion I would make, is that there is, partner with these companies and take the kind of route of working with fintechs and adopting the new technologies and new innovative ways of dealing with identity, because it is out there, and there is huge amounts of innovation in this. So yeah, that's one of the points I would make.
We're certainly seeing it with blockchain, of course, but be interested to hear what you have.
Well, identity, I think, is a fascinating topic, especially for banks. Look, as bankers, we tend to claim that our key competence is risk management, but it's only because we have a set of data that soon will be in an open form, thanks to PSD2. And I'm pretty sure in 3 to 5 years' time, there will be companies that will be much better than banks just by having more data. So I'm comfortable thinking that risk management in the future will be outsourced from banks. But what banks been doing for hundreds of years really well is KYC, and it's customer authentication. That's probably the biggest assets we have these days. So we need to think as an industry how we can scale with services beyond banking. This is why PKO Bank Polski is so advanced and so into AID, which is a service that will allow to offer authentication for our customers on third-party sites. So if you imagine your electricity company, I will be able to say that Szymon is for sure Szymon Wałach and provide the data needed, for example, to open an account or subscribe a service. The second big advancements that we're working on is ability to digitally sign contracts, where we also will authenticate that. And I think that's something where we need to think beyond banking in order to maintain relevant for our clients. What Polish banks are doing really well is also linking up with government services, which in future gives us a chance to be a platform that is more relevant for customers than just banking. I mean, these days, using electronic banking at leading Polish banks, you can check your social security status, you can check your speed limit points, you can, I recently lost an ID and I was able to block that ID sitting at my sofa at home and actually request a new one and do it all digitally. You can also set up a limited liability company using electronic banking of PKO Bank Polski. So that is something that is the future of banks, where banking is just beyond just simple transactions like giving credit or making sure that the payment is being made. We need to be an authentication platform and that secure site for where customers will be comfortable keeping their data and also storing their identity. I think that's the way to go.
So I know we're running short on time, but I do want to answer the first question here, since you did mention PSD2. So the question was concerning PSD2 and open APIs, how are banks going to keep in touch with customers instead of becoming B2B money hubs, competing with modern startups? Any thoughts there?
They're not. I think that's the hub of it. When you know these APIs mature and stimulate an ecosystem of third-party providers, fintech apps, I think that is going to really become the problem. The only way that the banks will be able to keep up, the incumbent banks will be able to keep up, is to go at the speed of a startup. You know, if you look at Amazon, you know, they talk about doing 11,000 releases a day. I worked briefly at a large bank, and they, for the time I was there, which was 6 months, they didn't do one release. You know, our bank, we've done 2,500 production releases so far this year. So the only way you're going to stay in touch is to you know, it's the lean startup ideology of, you know, build, test, learn, and rapidly iterate through that cycle. So you're building the features that your customers want. So you're constantly finding product market fit as your market changes. It's the only way they're going to stay in touch.
Any parting words of advice?
Really, in a couple words, open banking for banks like PKO is a chance to be really offensive players. So I think that's going to be a big chance for us. Probably that's bad news for smaller banks that cannot afford that IT investments and, you know, maintaining the infrastructure. So my guess is that the winners of PSD2 will be large digitally advanced banks, and also those big marketplaces like Google's, like Amazon's, as they can afford that investments, and also making sure that they embed those services into their platforms.
Great.
Yeah, very quickly, because I know we ran out of time, but I think I would say, you know, change isn't coming, it's already arrived. But with change comes new opportunities, so I think it's actually an exciting time for all of us to be here and be involved in this. So I think, yeah.
Great.
Look forward to the rest of the day.
Thank you so much. Thank our panelists, and thank you guys.